March, we'll begin the process of formulating all of our recommendations around all of those areas, and hopefully kind of seeing where we can make some connections as well. So we have Aaliyah Andrews with the Office of Behavioral Health, who is also the recovery TA, and she has graciously agreed to help us guide us in this process. And so I will turn it over to Aaliyah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. I'm excited to be talking about recovery this month and next. I know that the agenda looks like it's a lot and very daunting. Trust me, it's not as much as it looks like, and it looks like we have 5 minutes, so we're starting a little bit early. So what we're going to do today is I am going to, as the Recovery Services Coordinator at the Office of Behavioral Health, I monitor and am the program manager for 6 recovery programs. I am going to go over those 6 recovery programs and give you an overview, just like a snapshot of what they do. And then we're going to have a little discussion that will probably have to be cut off. And when it is cut off, that's fine, because we can continue next month, because we have February to continue these conversations. And so at 10 o'clock, we will have the Office of Employment First, DBR, and I doing a presentation on Employment First in Colorado and what that looks like, and the preferred model, which is IPS, which I'm sure everybody is really pretty familiar with here. So we're not going to go into super detail about it, but we are going to discuss Employment First and the progress that we've made doing employment, and then hopefully talking about ways to get that incorporated into other places other than the community mental health center, which is the only place that has contracts with us. And then after that, we have Krista from COPA coming in. So it's not smooth. Like, we're not doing all peer stuff and then employment. So we're going kind of back and forth. So it was so anyway, COPA, she'll be here to just discuss certifications, what certifications look for peer specialists at this point. So, and then, so that'll just be the last half hour. And again, when we have time, which we will probably after this presentation, when we'll have time to discuss what is happening. And just obviously, the reason we're here is to get your ideas. And the reason is to have an, discussion about what we want recovery to look like in the state. So, so with the 6 recovery programs, I have to tell you that they are not one size fits all. And the reason I say this is because the presentation might look funky. Some places have two slides, some places have 3 bullet points. So all of the recovery programs that I work with are completely 100% different. They all do completely different things. So there is some interwoven stuff, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I want to let you also know that these contracts will be over June 30th. So the recovery programs that I'm going over today are just to give you an idea of what we're doing. The RFP for the next recovery programs to come through should be out very soon. Like, I'm hoping by the beginning of next week, but you can't quote me on that, because we've been saying that for a long time, haven't we? Like, we've been discussing this for a long time here in Bhpac. So, and there's some changes to this RFP. One of the changes is that we have decided to give some of the money to the MSOs. And some of you might be familiar with this, some of you might not. So we have given some of the money to the MSOs, and they will be monitoring the substance use RCOs. So what we're doing at OBH and the RFP that I'm talking about will be co-occurring or mental health, and not just substance use. So, So that's one of the changes. And we're also doing recovery run, recovery led organizations. So that's instead, because at this point we have some that are not recovery led, peer led, peer run. So those are like the big differences on this. So if you are a substance use organization and you want to apply for these funds for fiscal year 2022, go ahead and talk to your MSOs about it. And I think we've been discussing this. So I hope this isn't like big news. And so yeah, so let's see. Okay, I think I got everything on my notes. Any questions before I get started on the presentation?
I have a question.
Yes.
How are you determining recovery-led, recovery-driven, peer-led, peer-driven? Is there a process that's going to take a look at what they do? Because a lot of places sound peer-led or recovery-driven on paper, but are not in person.
Yes, we have an application process. So we will have a committee of people looking through the applications. I'm actually not really sure what that's going to look like. You hear rumblings. I'm not sure if I'll be on it or not. But yes, we will have a committee of people making sure that it is a peer-run, peer-led organization.
This committee, is it going to have peers on it that have autonomy, that will be able to look at it themselves and report directly on their feedback? Or is it going to be like all together?
I don't know the answer to that. Ryan, do you?
Yep. So with the RFP scoring process, yeah, that's the committee Aaliyah's talking about. So a standardized process through state procurement. So any of those RFP contracts, it goes through a review committee that I think that's where Aaliyah's talking about. She doesn't know if she will be on the committee or how the committee members will be chosen. What ends up happening is each one of the applications is reviewed by all of the members on the committee, and they make they score each one of the applications. Yeah, so I don't think we know yet who's going to be on that app or on that application committee, or even how to get on there, because it's all run through central procurement for the state.
And I'm sorry, I missed. So we need to talk to our MSOs and what is it called again? RFP for what?
I'm actually not sure what the MSOs are calling it or how they are doing it. That's kind of out of my scope.
Okay. So just ask them about this RFP for peer recovery.
Yeah, I would say RFP for, I think the focus is on RFPs. Or not, I'm sorry, not RFPs, RCOs. So recovery community organizations. Okay. I think that this is the focus for, I think the MSOs, I can't speak for the MSOs.
Okay.
So, but I'm thinking that if you said that, they would go, oh yeah, this is, and it's coming from the substance use block grant from OBH as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and one more thing with the MSO stuff, the Senate Bill 16202, so those funds that essentially funnel directly to the MSOs, from a few years back, there's also recovery components in that. They had to do the community assessment plan, and a lot of the MSOs have recovery funds through 202 dollars. So if you're interested, I mean, MSOs are really trying to take a more leadership role in recovery services, rather than just focusing on the traditional treatment route. But yeah, we can talk a little bit about that a little bit more during when the legislative session kicks on, because there is a lot of behind the scenes work related to recovery going on right now. So we are, yep, we will have some bills this year related to recovery, even if they were the ones from last year that didn't make it. So just be ready for that as well. So the hope is that, yeah, there is some extra money this year to put extra money in recovery, which yeah, and we can talk about that a little bit more once we actually have bill language. So,
Thank
Aaliyah, this is James Gannon with AFR Colorado. First off, thank you for everything that you do. Can you kind of clarify, like, I know the MSO is for RCOs, and that last one that you talked about, the recovery-led, peer-led, is going to be through OBH. Like, what's the difference?
The difference is the MSOs are specifically substance use, and OBH is co-occurring and substance use. Or not just co-occurring in mental health. So my question for you, James, is advocates for recovery, addiction, and substance use only, or is it mental health as well?
We deal with both, but we're the statewide RCO, so we're through our MSO. I was just curious on the recovery-led, peer-led, but that's mostly based towards the co-occurring or mental health.
Like I said, I can't speak for the MSOs, so I'm not sure what they're looking for, but that's what we're looking for at OBH.
I guess my clarifying question is that last piece that you talked about, the recovery-led, you said that OBH was going to oversee that, right?
OBH is, so both, I'm assuming both are recovery, peer run, peer led, the substance use and the co-occurring. But like I said, I can't totally speak to that with the MSOs. But yes, ours is going to be a co-occurring peer run, peer led.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Did I answer your question? Oh.
This is Margie. I just wondered, is this then only for folks on Medicaid, or is it for others, for people that are underinsured or no insurance?
That's a good question. I think that actually opens another big can of worms happening right now, but it is not Medicaid funded. This is not for just Medicaid funded. We're actually hoping to fund organizations that don't have that type of money, that don't have the Medicaid coming in.
Aaliyah,
That's a great question.
Thanks for coming today. On the MSO, that is for the substance. And then there's the OBH that I've heard people say co-occurring or mental, or co-occurring and mental. Is there a, whatever we're talking about, an RFP that you would put together because your organization is only mental?
Yes, if it's mental health only, peer run, peer led, then you would do one for the OBH. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, that's how we started it, just to have mental health only. And then that took kind of everybody out. It kind of took everybody out of the running. So we changed it to co-occurring. Any other questions? Great questions. This is exciting. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and go through. We have Nancy and Laura here. So both of your, Laura, we have Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. So I'm not sure if you'll recognize what I'm talking about here. And then we have Southeast, and Nancy's still here. So if there's anything that I'm missing or anything that you want to add, please do. I would totally appreciate it. And like I said, this is just kind of a screenshot. I got information obviously from talking to my providers, but also from the SOW's statement of work. And so here we go. All right, I hope. All right, so can everybody see that? I'm not sure what it looks like to everybody. Lauren's doing something. Okay, good, we're good. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So recovery support services looks like this right now. We have Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, like I said, and they have helped people to overcome with physical and mental health. They do this with addressing trauma and coordinating care. So they have case managers that help. They facilitate the Wellness and Recovery Action Plan. I'm sure everyone here knows what that is, but it's kind of a thread through a lot of these. So I went ahead and put what the definition was here. It's just a self-designed prevention and wellness process to anyone to use to get well. So what we're doing here is we're going from when we feel great, how we want to be treated, what we want to do, what's important to us for our wellness. And I'm not an expert on RAP, so I'm just kind of giving you an overview. And if you're in crisis, who is going to water your plants? Who's going to, just take care of what you need? Do you want to go into the hospital and stuff like that? So that's kind of a very, very short overview of what RAP is. All right, so they also help maintain housing, and they're going to do this by problem solving and skill building and setting goals. I'm assuming they're doing this everywhere. So with Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, we're really focused on engaging in everyday life. So employment, education, getting into the community, and all sorts of group activities. So that's basically the program at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless that we're funding. Colorado Mental Wellness Network, here they do RAP as well. They train people to do RAP with their clients as well as doing RAP with their clients. They also assist with resources with a database, and they do a full training for peer specialists. There's a couple of these programs that do that. One thing that is different about the network, which no other of these do, is they have kind of a drop-in center at the Open Door Ministries. And here is just where they offer peer support. They have 1 or 2 peer specialists at the Open Door Ministries, and they help with whatever someone would need help with, individuals who need peer support. So they have computers, and so they support a lot with that as well. And then we have empowerment. Empowerment is what we do here is facilitate groups. They do an employment. They actually do have an employment program. They do IPS actually. And so OBH funds that, and they do a great job. So we have providing monthly supports with social exercises, and of course everything. And this, I want to just kind of add that this is not COVID. I'm not talking about what's going on in COVID in these. I'm just kind of talking about the overall contracts that we have with them. So they have all kinds of, they have a brown bag cafe where people resources, and they can get some needs met with food and all kinds of different stuff. So, and then we have the Phoenix Multiplex. The Phoenix Multiplex is a fitness recovery organization. Here they do fitness groups, anything from CrossFit, like Brian was talking about, and yoga, like a lot of people were talking about. So they do a lot of great stuff. They have camping trips to Moab, which I understand is life-changing to participants that get to go to this. I actually think I should go. I think it would be a lot of fun. So, and then they also have a program called Together Families Recover, and in this they're assisting families who have been who have had challenges with substance use to build relationships and get back together and repair some problems that they had had. Now we have Southeast Health Group here. So this is a program where it's peer specialists are helping with the transition from treatment to recovery. They do a lot of transportation, so they not always driving, but making sure coordinating transportation. They also have ride-alongs with the police if there's a mental health crisis. So the peer specialist goes along with the police department, which I think that this is a topic we could definitely talk about, because that would be, I think that might be a good place to put peers. They do a rap group. The transportation is to treatment, to NA meetings, AA meetings. They do support groups, chronic illness, to LGBTQ groups, and then on-site self-improvement groups. So, and then Southeast, I think that might be it for Southeast. Yes, okay. So next we have young people in recovery. So this is, I just want to clarify with young people in recovery that this is 18 and over. Typically, I don't think someone below that would get taken out, but it's typically, and they have 2 different programs. And first off, I want to say that they have recovery meetings around Adams, Arapahoe, Denver, and La Plata. They have recovery meetings in different spaces, but they also have 2 different curriculums. And one of the curriculums is for criminal justice involved participants. And they do everything from education, employment, literacy, for finances, housing, let's see, recovery, messaging across just across these counties. So that's one of them. So that's the Phoenix. And then they have a proprietary life skills group, which is the same types of stuff talked about. It's just not with the criminal justice. And I just thought this was kind of fun. EPIC stands for engaged, peer developed, individualized, and community centered. So I think one thing that really binds all of these programs together is obviously the peer support. So I think we've been talking about peer support here in Bhpac for as long as I've been here, and just the importance of it, and how beneficial it is to the people who are suffering. And we're also talking about it. I don't know if anybody just like was listening to the JBC hearing, but there was a lot of conversation about it, and there was also a lot of questions from the JBC about peers. So I think that we're in a good spot. And then Ryan was talking about some legislation. So we're in a good spot with attention on peers right now. So and also community. I think a lot of these programs, I just like tying it together. So we have peer and we have community. I think it's important to get out into the community and work on destigmatizing mental health and substance use. And I think that this is a really, really great way to do it. So like I said, all of these contracts are up June 30th. We have the RFP coming out next month. Hopefully I'll have more information about what's going on with the MSOs, or I can try to get more information and send it to Donda to get to you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. And I am also going to put my email in here. And if anyone knows of a organization that they think that would be good for the co-occurring or mental health, please email and let me know. Okay, so any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
I was wondering if it seems, I didn't wonder, it seems like these are Denver Metro programs, and I'm wondering if they are all physically based or if they've gone virtual, and if there are any rural area or outside of the Denver Metro that are possibilities.
I love that question. And it actually comes up with a question that I have, which is how are we going to get underserved people these services? So I think that, thank you for bringing that up. They have gone virtual. I wish I'm not sure I'm going to get all your questions, but they have gone virtual. It is not just Denver metro area. Phoenix is actually in different states. Yeah, so it's definitely not all central and rural areas. And I think we talked about this in the treatment meeting. I want to say we talked about this in the treatment meeting, maybe the first treatment meeting we had, talking about getting RCOs into rural areas and how we're going to do this. So that's a really, 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 really great question. And I think it would be a really great recommendation as well. If I don't know how the recommendations go. Yeah, Jacob.
Thanks, Aaliyah, for all you do for the recovery community. Yeah, to kind of follow up with Lorraine's question, I was doing some research. It looks like Southeast is based out of Southern Colorado, so Springfield, La Junta. They got a lot of good programs down there. I didn't even know about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love I started as a peer specialist, and then I was an employment specialist, and then I was a supervisor for employment specialist. So all of this is like near and dear to my heart. So it's a pleasure. I appreciate you thanking me, but it's like no need to. It's a pleasure, and I just think this is all very, very exciting and very, very important. So thanks, Jacob.
Jacob, you're correct. Southeast Health Group, we serve 6 counties in the southeast corner of the state. And our peer houses are in La Junta, Lamar, and since we got the Recovery Support Services grant, we opened one in Rocky Ford with the support of the Colorado Health Foundation. They're also putting out an RFP that's due, or it's out, and it's due February 15th for recovery programs. So please check out the Colorado Health Foundation website if you're interested.
I'm going to put that in the chat. Colorado Health
Foundation.
Okay.
I can put a link too.
That would be awesome. I don't know how to spell. Like really, I cannot spell health sometimes.
Miss Aaliyah, is it all right that I'm talking now? I thought that there was a gap.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, please.
So OBH wants to know how to get to rural communities, and one would imagine other communities that are underserved. Is this kind of an invitation for us to reach out to you, or should we wait for you to reach out to us to get involved in that? I
am actually not sure how this works. The reason I'm bringing this to Bhpac is because of recommendations. I would like a discussion about what you all would like to recommend these block grants going to. Ryan, do you have anything else to?
Yeah, Lorraine, Aaliyah, I think that's exactly where Bhpac should pick this up. What is the need for recovery support services in other areas of Colorado? I think there's a statewide need, but how do we we as a state, do we prioritize rural and frontier areas? And then what does that look like? So I think that's can be one of those questions that could be addressed through BPAC about how recovery support services are distributed across the state. So, Lorraine, I think you're exactly there. And yeah, this is where we would look for BPAC to provide some of that advisory capacity to OBH and saying, this is how you should do this thing, rather than us trying to reach out to folks that we may not know even exist. And that's what we definitely want to utilize your all's expertise for.
Thanks, Ryan. Anything else for now? I think we have all of our employment people on here. I see Patricia. Hi, Deirdre, Rachel. I'm here. All right. So let's kind of change gears a little bit. We wanted to introduce BPAC to the Office of Employment First, and Patricia's the director of that. As you all know Patricia, I'm sure. So, so we are, like I said earlier, we're just going to do a presentation on Employment First in Colorado, the progress that we've made, and a little bit about IPS. I looked at the recommendations from 2 years ago, and it was heavy with IPS. So, like I said, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details about it, but obviously, any questions please answer any questions or ask any questions. Will you answer my questions for me, everybody? That would be really, really nice. So yeah.
I will.
Okay, thanks.
I got you.
Yeah, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started with this presentation. Is everybody ready?
Yeah, and I'll run the slides, Aaliyah, if that's okay.
Are you a co-host?
I think I can run them without being a co-host.
I'll add just a second.
Oh, I know I can't.
Let me pull you up, Deirdre. Hold on, I'll get you in.
Perfect. Thank you. Trying to take over slide sharing and denied.
Try now.
All right, let's see. Oh yeah, thank you, Donda. All right. Can everybody see this? Right. Here we go. So let's start off by introducing ourselves. How about we do that? So I am Deirdre. I work for the Colorado Office of Employment First. I'm a curriculum developer and trainer. Before that, I worked in a community mental health center for 14 years. I did clubhouse work and drop-in center work and IPS, individual placement and support, and recovery and recovery-oriented programs are near and dear to my heart. They're my passion. And so I was really excited to see Aaliyah's presentation today. That was fun. So jump in, colleagues, when you're ready to introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Rachel Hord. I'm the Behavioral Health Supported Employment Trainer Coordinator with the Division of Vocational Rehab in the Department of Labor and Employment. I have been in this position for about 1.5 years, and prior to that, I was a rehabilitation counselor with DVR.
So I'll go next. This is Patricia Hankey. I'm the director of the Colorado Office of Employment First, and I see many familiar faces here. It's great to see everyone. I actually had the pleasure of serving on this council for a few years when I was with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation before I transitioned into this new role, and just always impressed by the diversity, the passion and commitment of this council to continue to advocate for systems change in behavioral health. So thank you for the time today. A little bit about my background. My background is in employment for individuals with disabilities, and we could probably talk about it for hours, but we're gonna respect your time today. But I worked in private nonprofits about the first half of my career in doing employment services for individuals with disabilities, various disabilities. And then I transitioned into state government about, gosh, I don't know, 16 years ago. And so was with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation for about 14 of those years, and then transitioned to the Office of Employment First about a little over a year ago. So happy to be here.
You all know me. I don't need to introduce myself.
All right, so I'm actually going to kick us off with the first few slides and talking about Employment First initiatives in Colorado. And specifically, you know, we want to talk about how it aligns with employment being a social determinant of health and a key aspect of recovery. I love this conversation about recovery services, and we definitely want to let you all know about what's happening in employment and how we view that as a key aspect of recovery for individuals. So a little backstory on how the Office of Employment First was developed. I'll go over this pretty quickly. In 2016, we became an Employment First state, Colorado. Employment First is a national movement. There's over half of our nation's states are implementing Employment First initiatives. And this legislation mandated the convening of what's called the Employment First Advisory Partnership, which Aaliyah is our representative from the Mental Health Authority, Office of Behavioral Health, that serves on that partnership. And it convenes 5 state agencies, as well as individuals with disabilities, community partners, family members, and many others. And so this group has been meeting since 2017 and was charged with developing recommendations to the legislature to recommend what is needed for Colorado to fully realize being an Employment First state. And we were fortunate to have a budget appropriation approved in 2019 that then developed the Colorado Office of Employment First. And the relationship is an interagency agreement between the Colorado Department of Labor, specifically the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and University of Colorado under the School of Medicine, and specifically JFK Partners. So our team are CU employees, essentially. So wanted to mention all of that there's been a lot of Employment First work going on for many, many years that has led to this progress and these new opportunities. We can go to the next slide. I'm not sure who's running the slides. Okay, great. So what is Employment First? Employment First is, it's a value system. It's a belief that individuals with disabilities, regardless of the severity of the disability, can work in competitive employment that is fully integrated into the general workplace. Employment First is focused on this being the preferred outcome for individuals versus any other type of employment, meaning subminimum wage, crew, or group type employment. Like basically Employment First is saying that like that's not really employment. Like what's really employment is when you go to a real job with real wages and you work with your coworkers and you have opportunities for advancement and that you're fully included in the general workforce. And we've had a lot of historically individuals with significant disabilities have been marginalized in employment and actually have been viewed as not employable. And so this movement is changing that culture and and trying to change the culture and belief system and create opportunities for not only individuals with disabilities, but their own families, but to create the belief and confidence that competitive work is possible. And it's not only do you have the ability and capability, but you have the right to have access to evidence-based and evidence-informed practices such as IPS to go to work. Next slide. So a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound like a repeat because so I'm going to try not to repeat too much so we can get to the IPS portion of the presentation. So a lot of in our development at the Office of Employment First, the vision and mission is very aligned with the messages I just said, and really our charge is to create that culture in Colorado and raise the expectation about employment for individuals with disabilities. We are a cross-disability organization, so I think that's important to mention. It's not specific to any one population. We work with all populations and service provider organizations and partners. And so our mission is very focused on developing that culture of inclusive, meaningful, and competitive employment for all people. And then through our mission, there's 3 key areas. Collaboration is the first, which is critical to any movement or work like this, is that we have to be partnering with all of our entities that are involved and are passionate on this topic. But we're charged with creating that common expectation about work and even influencing. Sometimes we see just within our own systems and our own individuals that we work with that we have to kind of challenge belief systems a little bit and talk about people that they may thought couldn't work and asking, well, why do you think that? And having that conversation to see, maybe what's behind that belief system. But ultimately, we see employment as leading to a financially secure, healthy, and fulfilled life for individuals, and that through collaboration, we want to create that expectation for employment at a young age for individuals. We're focused a lot on transition age youth and even younger, to where competitive work is just expected when you're of working age, and that you transition into that. Systems innovation, I think, is aligned with a lot of what the council's work does. Your council is, we are often convening decision makers to influence policy that promotes employment first initiatives. A lot of times that is just looking at kind of systems barriers and streamlining access for individuals, so they're not having to jump through a lot of hoops and deal with a lot of bureaucracy. Another area of that is also looking at rates and rate structures for employment service providers, not only for providing the service, but also funding to assist increased access to IPS and other evidence-based practices. And then training is a big focus area for us. We do lots of training on evidence-based practices, evidence-informed practices, and with ongoing learning and practice communities, which we'll share a little bit more with you about. Next slide. Okay, so every slide's like a surprise to me when it comes up. These are training focus areas. I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can see that there's several areas of focus that we've had in our first year and in training and learning and practice communities. You'll see individual placement and support is there in the middle as the evidence-based practice for behavioral health, but we're also looking at expanding, or we are expanding, as you'll hear, into other populations. And I'll just say it here because I don't know if it's going to be mentioned later, but I think it's worthwhile. IPS is one of the most researched behavioral health interventions in the industry. and it's an employment practice. And, you know, one of my, I guess, when I get on my advocacy soapbox is that, you know, employment, I would like to see IPS as seen as a valued therapeutic intervention as any of the other interventions that are in place. I really see IPS not only as a recovery support service, but as you implement it, it's also an opportunity for prevention. Because it's not a one-time intervention, it's ongoing and time unlimited. So just wanted to advocate or mention that in terms of the value of the practice. And so you see other areas there. We have new initiatives coming up around employment engagement, or employer engagement in technology solutions and so forth. We are currently, all of our trainings have moved to virtual. Everything is virtual as of March 2019. We hope to get back out into the community in the future. We're very much looking forward to that when that day comes. There's many other initiatives that we're focused on. I'll put my email address. I think this is my last slide. Let's just go to, is this my last slide? Do we transition to Rachel after this one? Yes, so before in closing, I will just mention that I love the peer conversation and talking about, you know, having peers, not only peer run, peer led organizations, but also, you know, how can we incorporate and professionalize peers within the IPS employment model and others. We see the value in that, and it also helps with just kind of the employment first mission. You know, we do have IPS, it's pretty robust in the state in a lot of areas. However, we still have a low percentage of our population that have access to this evidence-based practice. And the recommendations were made last year, or the last round, because I was a part of those, I believe. But there still was no new funding allocated for IPS. So I'm saying that because I don't think it should be discontinued as a recommendation or moving forward. And until we, you know, really have specific funding for this program for sites, it's going to be difficult to expand it. All right, I will transition now. Thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you, Julie, and everyone for having me. Rachel and the rest of the team are going to talk more about IPS.
If we have questions, should we wait until the end of the presentation, or could we ask them during each break?
I think we could ask them during each break. We have Krista from COPA coming at 10:30, so we need to be somewhat mindful of the time.
Okay, I do have a question then. You talked a lot about competitive, and I'm glad it said meaningful in there. I think meaningful is really important. But hopefully last year, House Bill 1139, which did not pass, but is trying to be brought back this year to create autonomous peer-run services in the state of Colorado and have them be billable directly. My question is, if that was to pass and peers were to create their own services, not through the system, would IPS or DVR support people developing their own business plans and peer-run services? And I'll just use myself as an example. I want to open up a peer-run respite. When I approached my DVR counselor with that idea, things got scary. I was told that I would be committing fraud if I was to open up my own business plan after using DVRs for as long as I have, and I would owe them money for everything that they paid for. So I just want to ask, you know, if peer services and meaningful employment are what we're going for, will peers be able to be self-directive and create their own programming in the future?
Rachel,
So
do you want to answer
I'll
that?
just try to respond really quickly. I'm familiar with the House bill that you're mentioning, and I just listened to the stakeholder meeting. I think it was just a couple days ago or yesterday, I don't remember, but on that bill. And I think there's a lot to be determined on kind of the implementation of that. You know, and Rachel can speak to the DVR piece. You know, DVR definitely does have a self-employment program, but there are specific policies that drive the implementation of that. And, but that did come up in the stakeholder meeting around kind of self-employment, you know, and being an independent contractor versus creating nonprofit, things like that. So I don't think much of that has been fleshed out yet or even discussed, but I'm glad that you're raising the question now so that can be considered.
And I can just add that part of our self-employment program is that we do not support nonprofits, unfortunately, as a self-employment option. So, but Ty, I would encourage you to continue to talk with your counselor and see what you can work on together so that you can fulfill what you want for your journey to employment. All right, so I'm going to move on. Thank you for that question. I'm going to talk about individual placement and supports, which is also known as IPS, and it works perfectly with Colorado becoming an employment first state in 2016 because IPS is focused around employment first and being really important in recovery. Along with the clinical interventions that are going on. So IPS is a model of supported employment for people with serious mental illness. IPS supported employment helps people living with behavioral health conditions work at regular jobs of their choosing. Although variations of supported employment exist, IPS refers to an evidence-based practice of supported employment. Mainstream education and technical training are included as ways to advance in career paths. And IPS is based on 8 practice principles. Next slide. So what is an evidence-based practice? This is really important, and what IPS thrives on is that there's been, like Patricia said, a lot of research showing that this practice works, and there's been since I think 1990 that Employment Center started researching this way of supported employment. And so an evidence-based practice is any practice that relies on scientific and mathematical evidence to form strong inductive or deductive arguments for guidance and decision-making. Practices that are not evidence-based may rely on tradition, intuition, or other unproven methods. So what it's saying is that IPS works. So IPS in Colorado, Colorado joined the IPS International Learning Community in 2013, but the Office of Behavioral Health, the Community Mental Health Centers, and the DVR and the Division of Vocational Rehab began providing supported employment services through an interagency agreement back in the 1980s. OBH funds 21.3% and DVR funds 78.7%. So we have been providing supported employment services together through the community mental health centers funded by DVR and OBH for a very long time, and IPS came into our worlds in 2013 here in Colorado, which is very exciting. 12 of the 17 community mental health centers across the state implement IPS. So again, here's IPS in Colorado. So Mental Health Center Denver, they were the very first, they started implementing IPS back in 2005. In 2010, Jefferson Center for Mental Health Center of Denver, and and I think that should be MHP, Mental Health Partners. They started implementing IPS through a Worky grant. Don't ask me what Worky stands for. Aaliyah might know, but I forget. And that was a 3-year or 5-year grant, to 5 years to work on IPS. And then it kind of started off, and then it kind of just grew throughout the community mental health centers, and DVR and OBH joined that learning community. And now the Office of Employment First began in 2019, and IPS continues to grow. So here's a list of all of the mental health centers, as well as other entities that are implementing IPS across Colorado. I'm not going to read them all off to you, but it's a lot, and we're looking to expand. So Patricia mentioned IPS expansion, so we want to expand to other populations. So currently there are dual diagnosis programs happening where IPS is being implemented for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as behavioral health disorders. There are 3 programs currently that are implementing IPS in opioid use disorders at centers for that. There's a brain injury screening pilot that went on with Mental Health Center of Denver to identify those that have co-occurring possible brain injuries, as well as behavioral health disorders. And then there is temporary assistance for needy families. So the TANF program in Jefferson County did a pilot, and now they are implementing IPS with the individuals that they work with. And I'm gonna pass it off to Deirdre.
So we've said it before, but we're gonna say it again. IPS has taken off in Colorado specifically because it is supported by so many entities. And you can see here a little diagram. IPS is surrounded by the support of several different state entities, and of course the IPS Employment Center. And this is so important because this has kind of gained this momentum in Colorado to kind of keep it going. These organizations really believe in IPS as being an effective intervention for individuals with mental illness to not only achieve employment outcomes, but also its employment as a connection to recovery. And we achieve this mission together in our community mental health centers through what is called capacity-based funding, capacity-rated funding, or capacity-based protocol. And so we have our employment specialists and our job seekers doing a lot of really hard work and making sure that all of the work that is being done is individualized, is really about the job seeker, right? So all of that work translates into, produces funding from DVR, HCPF, OBH, and sometimes grants. And that's what keeps IPS programs in business. So it's multiple funding streams to ensure that there's a sustainable IPS program. Because what we hear from a lot of programs is there's a high demand for these services. People want to access employment. And so it's been a really cool thing to see Colorado support these centers and keeping their programs going and even growing. So we talked about IPS being an evidence-based practice. It's also supported by a 25-item fidelity scale, which is reviewed. So these programs that are providing IPS services are reviewed on an annual basis. And the idea is that this is quality. We want to make sure that they're providing quality services so that we have quality outcomes. And at the center of those services, Aaliyah will talk about the IPS practice principles, but ensuring that we're following these practice principles that are really truly person-centered. The fidelity, it's talking about how well somebody is providing services as they were intended to the evidence. So the better implemented, the better the outcomes. So the higher a fidelity score, we usually see a higher employment rate with our programs. And this just shows the employment rates of the 12 mental health centers that work with DVR, I believe, that are implementing IPS, and how the outcomes for their employment rates. So you can see that it's kind of blurry on my screen, but employment outcomes for individuals receiving IPS services versus those receiving non-IPS services doubled in the last year. That's huge. So it's continuing to be an effective model. And again, the more people we train, the more, you know, the representatives on this call are out there talking about it, the higher quality of services come around. It's Aaliyah's turn.
My turn. Okay, so everybody has kind of talked about how IPS is highly researched, and I do want to acknowledge Laura's comment about who is part of the research, and I agree, we definitely have a long way to go. So I definitely wanted to acknowledge that. So yeah, so this slide actually doesn't say anything that my colleagues haven't said. So next slide, please. All right, here's just a little graph just to kind of take a look at someone with severe mental illness wanting to work. You can see that 67% does, and then 33% does not, and just about 15% are. So Patricia mentioned that a lot don't have access to IPS. I don't think that this is what it's speaking to, but if we kind of compare the two, we probably have a lot of people who would like services so they could work. So next slide, please. Success at work can help with self-esteem, reduce psychiatric and substance use symptoms, and increase life satisfaction. So I want to just kind of point out that historically we have said you can't go to work because your symptoms are bad, or you shouldn't be thinking about working because it's going to make things worse. And research obviously here has shown that that's not the case. It's actually really, really helping people. Next slide, please. All right, here are the practice principles that Deirdre was talking about. So first we have a focus on competitive employment, which Patricia pointed out earlier. Eligibility based on client choice, which this is zero exclusion. So if, like I was talking about before, someone is struggling with any kind of symptom, we're not going to not work with them. We're going to continue to work with them, or we're hoping that they're going to be referred to an IPS program, regardless of what the symptoms are like. Integration of rehabilitation and mental health services. So we really do a wraparound with clients. We are going to talk to their therapist, prescriber, or peer specialist, hopefully, employment specialist. All of us are working together. We're going to meetings together. We're talking to everybody about the client as much as we can. So really, really wrapping around the client. Attention to worker preferences. Somebody mentioned this before. I'm not sure who it was, but we're really, really going to look at what the client wants to do individually. So if they want to do something that seems out of the ordinary for us, we're just going to do what we can to get them there or help them. I have to tell the Zamboni story. I'm sorry. I know. Oh, we have a couple minutes. So it's called the Zamboni story. There's many of them. So the Zamboni is just my favorite because it's just the easiest. But you have a client who wants to be a hockey player, and obviously they physically can't do it, mentally probably couldn't do it. So this client ended up on the ice rink cleaning in the halftime of the games with the Zamboni. So we might not be able to help them become a hockey player, but we can help them get to where they need to go. that they're going to be happy. And that's the point. The point is clients should be happy with where they're working. Then satisfaction, we all know this, right? We all have jobs. We have all had jobs. If we're happy at our jobs, our mental health is better, our physical health is better, just life is just better. So personalized benefits counseling, we want to make sure that they are not going to lose their benefits. They don't want to lose their benefits. We want to make sure that they have all of the education that they need in regards to what's going on with their benefits. Rapid job search, we believe that it is important just to get right to work, or not to get right to work, but get to looking for jobs. So in IPS, we meet the client the first time, and then within 30 days, we would like to be in front of an employer face-to-face. Obviously, that's not happening right now, but that's fine. Systematic job development. This is job developing for the client, getting the client's preferences, what they would like to do, and going and speaking with employers. We can speak with employers with the client. We can do it ourselves. The client can do it themselves, however they would like to do that. And then time unlimited support. We can work with the client for as long as they would like, and it's completely individualized. So if the client wants to do once a week for the first 2 months that they're working, and then go to once a month for a year after that, that's completely their prerogative. And not only like the time that the employment specialist is meeting, but the individualized support also is reference to when they're meeting with the therapist. Are they still meeting with their peer specialist? So we just, the whole entire integration piece continues throughout the client having a job. Next slide, please. All right, so here's just a little touch of success. This is from the IPS Center. When you are working, you are part of the real world. You feel connected. Having jobs gives me stability. I have something to look for every day. So that's the IPS consumer. And then from a business owner, the employment counselor helped me understand why Tony paces. It's okay. It's okay in the security business. So this is the success with the employer is really important, because there are things that we think might not be acceptable, but if we're job developing and communicating with employers, then we are definitely going to be able to get our clients fit with a job that they're going to be happy in. Okay. Conclusions. Employment's key to recovery. It's effective, and IPS is growing. And so we would like to continue that growth. So that is it. We are going to move on straight to COPA, to Krista. Thank you so much for being here. I didn't see if you would like me to advance your slides. Okay, she's gonna
No, I'll do it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I will do it. Okay, let me just fix my screen so that I can share with you all.
Donda, can you give her co-host?
Already did.
Awesome. All right.
Everybody, this is Krista.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Krista Speicher. I currently work with the Colorado Providers Association as their certification manager and administrator. So Aaliyah asked me to join you guys today just to give you kind of an overview of the peer certification and what that process looks like here in Colorado, and kind of how that process works. So in terms of our agenda, I just made a quick agenda just to kind of let you know what the PowerPoint kind of looks like and what we'll review. And Aaliyah has this, so she can send it to all of you if you're interested or if you want it. So I'm just going to review kind of the certifications that COPA has, the application process, the certification requirements, so initial and recertification, the committee process and application procedures, and then I just have some links and resources at the end if you guys are interested. So if you don't know COPA, the Colorado Providers Association, we're a professional trade organization that represents the substance use disorder prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery service providers here in Colorado. we have 2 certifications that are housed within the organization. So the Certified Prevention Specialist and the Certified Peer and Family Specialist, which is what we're going to talk about today. In terms of the application process, let me make this better. I don't like that. We'll do it this way, it's easier. Okay. In terms of the application process, so what an individual will do if they want to become a certified peer is they first really need to review the certification manual. It's all over the website. It has all of the information they need in order to walk them through the process. Then they have to attest to living in Colorado at least 51% of the year. They pay their initial fee. They complete the online application. Once they open their application in our online system, which is through Certimi, then they have 2 years within which to upload and submit all of the requirements needed. Prior to the final submission, the applicant is required to pay their additional processing fee and their examination fee, which is $245. When the application is complete, and usually I do this as an ongoing process, but the certification manager reviews their application, makes sure that it's complete and ready for review. Once all of the items are submitted, then the certification committee evaluates the application and determines if that applicant is eligible to sit for the exam. So once the certification committee approves their application, the applicant is then pre-registered for the exam. I then notify them that they've been pre-registered. I tell them they're going to receive a link from the testing organization and that they then go in and schedule a time and date for the exam. Once they pass the exam, then their certification is finalized and their recertification cycle begins. If they do not pass the exam or they miss their scheduled test date, then they need to get into contact with us so that we can reschedule and figure out what they need to do in order to get rescheduled and pay that additional exam fee. It's really important to understand that the process, if an applicant takes 2 years to complete the exam, to complete the application, all sections of the application must be complete in order for the application to be submitted to the committee for review. So that's something that can be challenging in terms of if an applicant submits a bunch of their information at the beginning of their timeline, but they haven't finished their experience hours, the majority of their application is going to remain pending until they have submitted everything into the application. The reason for that is I am not authorized to make those decisions about what is and is not approved in the majority of the sections of the application. So a lot of the application will remain pending for that time until the application is 100% complete. So the requirements for initial certification. So I already mentioned that they have to work and live at least 51% of the time in Colorado. Their minimum education requirements are high school or equivalent or above. All of the trainings have to have taken place within the last 5 years of their application submission. They have to provide 60 clock hours of training specific to the required IC and RC domains. So that's 10 hours of advocacy, 16 hours of ethical responsibility, 10 hours of mentoring and education, 10 hours of recovery and wellness, 14 hours additional training. And that additional training, as determined by the committee, must include some trauma-informed care, cultural sensitivity, whole health, substance use, and family support. So the committee is really adamant about those 14 hours of additional training being pretty diverse and holistic kind of across the field. Additionally, they need 500 hours of work or volunteer experience. This cannot take place in less than 6 months. So over at least a 6-month period, and then 25 hours of supervision. After that, they need to pass the IC and RC exam, pay all their fees. I've got a link here to the initial application requirements on our website. So those are all of the initial certification requirements that have to be met in order for somebody to become certified as a peer and family specialist in Colorado. recertification requirements. So, oh, sorry, that's annoying. So the CPFS certification is valid for 2 years. So the moment that their initial certification is finalized, they have 2 years in order to complete their recertification requirements. So that's 30 hours of continuing education, not in prevention specific. This is what happens when you cut and paste. You should not. They have to correspond to the professional's work as a peer. So those 30 hours have to correspond to the professional's work as a peer and the IC and RC domains, and they need 6 hours of ethics. Those 6 hours of ethics is included within that 30 hours of continuing education. The committee does allow treatment and CAC trainings at a minimum for recertification. So they allow motivational interviewing, ethics, and trauma-informed care. Duplicate courses are not permitted. So professionals are not allowed to submit the same course within the 2-year cycle. So let's say they took ethics and boundaries in 2018 and ethics and boundaries in 2019. So the exact same course is not permitted to be submitted within the same cycle. They must provide certificates of training for each training, and they have to complete an application of continuing education statement, and they have to pay all their fees. All of this information is located on the website as well, and I've got that link there. Aaliyah, do you want me to take questions in the middle or just go through and see if there are questions at the end?
However you want to do it. Completely up to you.
It's kind of what you guys prefer, because this is a lot of information that I'm throwing at you, and it's really kind of specific numbers and whatnot. So I'm happy to take questions in the middle. If you guys have something, feel free to just interrupt, because I know it's kind of a lot of specifics.
I was curious to know if, for example, I volunteer at a clubhouse, and we sometimes do training for the police. But could we provide training for peer specialists? And if we did, do we get paid to do that?
So that's a really good question. I think what I would ultimately do, if you have specific questions about that, is I would have you email me and connect you with the chair of our certification committee. There is an official approved training process that organizations can apply to, or trainers can apply to become kind of an approved trainer. That process is pretty, I don't want to say simple. I mean, it does involve some work on the organization's part to provide the materials needed to show that your training aligns with the IC and RC domains and what needs to occur for a peer training. In terms of payment, COPA is not involved in any of that whatsoever, but I could connect you with some of the members of our committee who are trainers who have experience in that and know kind of how that process works.
Okay, yeah, that would be nice. Thanks.
I will, when I'm finished, I'll put my email address in the chat. Okay, so the certification committee. So the certification committee, their purpose is that they are technically the governing body for this professional certification and for the activities related to the peer and family specialist field here in Colorado. So they approve the certification credentials, they look at and they facilitate the certification exam, they certify providers for their continuing education, and they monitor and enforce those ethics that are necessary, and they promote reciprocity with other jurisdictions. So that's kind of a lot to say that the certification committees, you know, they're tasked with making sure that the standards are up to date, making sure that the education the peers are receiving is aligned with the IC and RC domains, and making sure that those standards are being upheld. So application procedure. So this is kind of the backdoor view, I guess, of what goes on in terms of the application process. And all this information is actually available on the website. It's actually available in the policy and procedures manual on the website. So, you know, it's one of those things that it's all available to the public, but a lot of times as professionals, we don't always have time to find all of it or look for it or whatnot. So, but in terms of the application procedures, all applications are performed online. So every application is submitted through our certification management system at Certami. So the applicant opens an application in Certami from our website. They have 2 years to complete that application. Throughout the process, I'm available to assist applicants with their process. However, I cannot tell them how to answer specific questions or where specifically to put trainings in the application. I also cannot discuss applications with third parties unless I have a release of information from the applicant themselves. So a lot of times I'll have a supervisor reach out saying my supervisee is having trouble with the application, and then I have to inform them that I can't discuss an applicant's information without a release of information. So that's an important part of the process. The ongoing application procedures. So I continuously review these applications as they're in process. I can approve certain steps without committee review. So that's the application, the questionnaire, whether or not their education is official, and their code of ethical conduct. But anything involving trainings, supervision hours, lived experience statement, those are not things that I, as a certification manager, am qualified to approve. So those things will remain pending in their application for as long as until their application is complete and submitted to the committee. So again, if it takes someone 2 hours to complete their application or get all of their training, anything they have uploaded within their application will remain pending for that amount of time. So that's something that it's in the manual and it's in places, but it's not common knowledge that everyone knows. So a lot of times professionals will reach out and say, I don't understand, I submitted this, 5 months ago, why hasn't it been approved? And then I have to respond to say, I'm not authorized to approve it until your application is complete and the committee has officially reviewed it. So applicants get automated notifications from Certami every time something's coming due or something is rejected or approved. And then we talked about once it's completed, the certification committee reviews. I review it and then compile the information for the committee to review. So the possible results of committee review, they can approve trainings and approve the application. They can reject trainings one by one. So if they do not feel that it aligns with the work of a peer or it aligns with the IC and RC domains, they can reject a training. They can also request additional information or provide application feedback. If that is the case, they get a form, a notification from myself with a form that says the certification committee reviewed your application. Here are the following things that they're requesting, right? So they might request additional information saying, your lived experience statement didn't include, the most common one is someone's lived experience statement didn't actually include how their lived experience is helping them in their work with peers, right? So they might have written a lot about their lived experience, but they didn't actually include the part about how that contributes to their work with peers. So that can be some application feedback, and then the committee just requests that the applicant revise their lived experience statement, and once they've done that and satisfied that requirement to the committee's satisfaction, then their entire application can be approved to move forward for the exam. And then here are just some resources and links. So I've got the committee's policy and procedures manual, the website, which has a ton of good information on it, and also the certification manual, which is extremely helpful because it walks the applicant and professionals through every single step of the application and how to do everything online in the Certami system. Which, as we all know, anytime you're trying to work with some new online application, it helps to have that step-by-step guidance. So yeah, so that's pretty much the overall process. Questions, concerns?
We have a question in the chat, Krista. What do you advise related to reciprocity and peer with certification from another state?
Okay.
Is the national, go ahead.
Sorry.
Is the national certification a better option?
So Colorado does have reciprocity with other states. So essentially that process, that's a really good question. That process is outlined on our website, but it also, what it does is we have reciprocity with other states. So the process is the professional, usually they reach out to us first. So let's say they're moving from Wisconsin. And so they reach out to us first and they say, what's the process of reciprocity? Then I reach out back and I say, okay, here's the link to our website. Here's the process. You need to get involved. You need to contact your current board right now. Let them know that you are moving or you're applying for reciprocity. And then that board contacts IC&RC and fills out an application for IC&RC. And then IC&RC essentially takes it from there and they contact us and tell the new board, here's your new person, put them in your system. They're now in Colorado. So it's actually a fairly seamless process. It just requires getting involved with a lot of different entities. So it is outlined on our website. We do have reciprocity. In terms of the national certification, I can't answer that because I personally don't have a lot of experience with that. I do know that most people who have been moving here or leaving Colorado to move to somewhere else, it's actually been a pretty easy process for them as long as they know which steps to do. Other questions?
This is Margie Grimsley. I was wondering, how will this work align with the workforce recommendations that are coming through the Behavioral Health Task Force, or that process?
That is a good question. I am not qualified to answer it. I would say that I would leave that to Aaliyah or maybe to Tanya, who might know better than I would regarding how that will align.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either. I think if Tanya has any ideas or if Ryan has any ideas. I think that the task force is in such a preliminary state right now that we really don't know what all of it is going to look like. But the reason I brought Krista is because of the workforce and just because of the peers and workforce and to make everybody here aware of what's happening now. So if anybody else has any ideas.
I guess I'll just throw in that maybe I should have phrased it differently, as it seems really important that they are aware of all of this work, so that sometimes I think when something new is happening, they don't have that understanding. They're trying to create something that really, there is a very concrete and very, I mean, it's a process that it's been worked on, and you wouldn't want anything to jeopardize the work that's been done.
Hi, Marjorie and everybody. This is Tanya Wheeler. I'm the Executive Director at Advocates for Recovery Colorado. I know this, Marjorie, that Daniel Darding is the Vice President of the board at COPA, and he's also, I don't know if he's the chair for the task force, but I know he's highly involved and he might be the chair. So I would think that that stuff is well known on both sides of the table. And as far as I can see in all of the information that's been shared at COPA about the task force and the information that's shared, I'm part of the certification committee. And in the information that's been shared there, it looks like it's all aligned. And so I agree with you. That's important for us to not cut off something that's already been established, but I'm pretty confident it's happening. Also, the questions about the national certification, IC&RC is actually an international certifying body. And so one of the caveats in the reciprocity is that in order for somebody to have reciprocity, they have to be coming from a state that has an ICNRC board. So if that's not a certification in their state, then that looks different than the process that Krista just described. I also know that NADAC has a national certification, and I can't answer those questions because everything we do is based on ICNRC.
Thank you for that clarification, Tanya. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Ryan. I have a question. Do you have to have a certification in order to provide peer support services as a peer in Colorado?
So the answer is no. I can see Krista and Aaliyah shaking their head. It's really up to the provider and what they write into their job description. I can tell you that a lot of places are really moving more toward getting peers that are certified, but as far as an absolute requirement, it's not.
Sure. Yeah, just trying to think about recommendations from BPAC moving forward. Is that something that should be a standardized requirement? Because it feels like that was, I know Tanya, you were on the stakeholder meeting for the peer bill earlier this week, as well as other people in this group. That I think that came up as what are standardizations if an organization receives public funds, and is that something that I think BPAC as a whole needs to be aware of and weigh in on that as well if y'all are interested in taking up that conversation. So
I agree, Ryan. I think it could be a good conversation. There's pros and cons on both sides, but obviously we don't have time for that discussion here. But I'm really looking forward to that stakeholder input about the standards.
Just out of curiosity, if someone in your organization is looking for work, what's the range of pay a person with this certification would make so they'd know whether it's worth their time and expense? Does anyone know?
You guys are going to leave me hanging in this, aren't you? So we've advocated from the very beginning for people to be able to make, a livable wage. And in our mind, that's a minimum of $15 an hour. I think each organization pays their peers differently. Like my peers that are employed with us, the rate is actually higher than that, but there's going to be some places that they're just going to do the sort of the minimum. So just know, Lorraine, that I'm always advocating for there to be a salary that's worthwhile for people to do this work, both in the mental health side and the SUD side.
Thanks.
I think there would be a possibility as well that if we do standardize and have everybody certified, then the codes at Medicaid might be higher because they have that credential. I think it's a possibility. So we have about 3 minutes left until our break. Any burning desires? And then, like I said, we're gonna be discussing this in February. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to chew off from today. So. Julie, do you want to just go to break?
I think that's a good idea. I think we all need a moment. So yes, so we will go to break. We will start again at 11:15. We'll have OBH updates and reports from people representing BPAC on other committees. So thank you guys for all your wonderful participation. Take a moment, get some tea, or do whatever helps your well-being, and we'll see you in 15. Right, it's 11:15. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan for OBH updates. And also, Ryan, do you have somewhere about having our members that represent us in other committees sharing, or should we do that first?
Yeah, I was just going to do it. We had talked about having this attached to the OBH updates, so I just have a placeholder on my updates for Ty and his mental health disorders in the criminal justice and juvenile justice system task force.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I'll turn it over to you.
So Ty, if you want to provide that update.
Sure. We met a couple weeks ago, and we're going to meet next week. I actually need to get together with Ryan. They've requested that someone from OBH might be able to attend the meeting and debrief us on some things. I can't remember the details at the moment. I'm very sorry. The other thing is Margie had made the recommendation, and I think it's a good one, that maybe the Behavioral Health Planning and Advisory Council might be a good resource into collecting data about consumer satisfaction through our networks. I'd like to talk to Ryan and see if maybe that's something that we can do to help provide information towards the task force. That's about all I have.
Yeah, Ty, if I mean, we can sit down and, I mean, is Moses still the chair of the task force? Or was
not really. He's stepping back, and we're looking for a vice chair, but I think he's still a good contact person.
Sure.
I think starting this month, I have to double check, but I want to say Lauren might be the new primary chair.
Okay.
Give me a second.
I think it was Ashley Tunstill.
Oh, yes. Ashley. I'm sorry. I had to look that up.
No worries. Yeah, Ty, I'll reach out to Ashley as well as CC Moses and see what they're specifically looking for. Ashley's CDHS staff as well from Division of Welfare, I believe. So I will reach out to them and yeah, CC you as well to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. And so with that, I guess, is there any questions for Ty and his representative role on MHD-CJS? So MHD-CJS is kind of in a weird spot this legislative year because they took the committee took the year off, right, with COVID. So they're usually at this time really wrapped up in the legislative process because they have the ability to run legislation and usually have 5 or 6 bills each year, but they just didn't do it this year because of COVID and whatnot. So
my understanding, because of COVID too, or because of what's happening, we're trying to support bills this year, but not actually run them. We're trying to figure out what our capacity is this year because we don't have the same sort of legal connections that we had in years past.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. And then so next up, Marcella with the State Rehabilitation Council.
I have not attended any meetings. The one is next week. I had reported last month that I had been able to, I was provided a really thorough, impressive orientation and have not attended an actual meeting because that's next week. However, at the start of this meeting, I did mention that I had an announcement to make. I am having some, my world the last couple of weeks just completely turned upside down. My personal family with illnesses, I mentioned that earlier, and it's not going to be over anytime soon. So I do need to resign from that. I really apologize. That is not my style, but this is health and it's family. And I just can't. I thought it was interesting this morning that that we're talking about self-care, because I really struggled the last couple of days to make this decision. Because when I make a commitment, my intent always, of course, is to follow through with it. And I really was excited about being involved and participating in the council, but I cannot.
Completely understand, Marcella, and totally support you doing what you need to do to take care of yourself and your family. So please do not feel bad at all about that, and let us know again how we can continue to support you. Is there anyone else who might be interested in filling that spot for Marcella? As we just had that presentation from the SRC, I know they would be really appreciative if someone would be willing to take over that slot.
Yeah, and Marcella, I want to echo the same thing. Is like taking care of you, taking care of your family is the most important thing, and I want to echo that for all BPAC members here. Is it's the most important person in this room is yourself, right? I mean, we need to be in a spot where we are feeling good, and in order to really provide our best for here. So with that, we're never going to look down on you if commitments you can't make, right? Like we are all here for each other. So with that, I mean, we will do whatever we can to make sure that what we are required through BPAC is being met, and we are a group, and we are willing to work together with one another, and and support one another. So with that, I'll continue to bring this up and make sure that we have representation on that. And it's the same thing. I'm asking the same thing from other state departments, getting our 4 state seats filled. So I think this is a good reminder, is that, yes, I mean, I think there is a lot of things going on. And yes, we need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves first. So
I really appreciate it. I have to say, I was really encouraged. I mean, it's impressive the work that goes on, including with BPAC, which is my primary interest. I want to remain here, definitely. I can do that. But to encourage others, because from the orientation and the materials that I've been sent and the materials that I've read, they do amazing work, and they provide services to a population that I think affects us all. So I really encourage others to join and see if that might be something you can do, because I really would. I know I would have really enjoyed it.
I'd be interested in filling in for you. Yep.
Thank you, Lorraine. That would be awesome, and you would be a tremendous asset, and that would be tremendous to have you be able to do that. Ryan, I'll let you notify Augusta about that then. Would that be the way to do it?
So do we want to make this completely formal? And I will put forth a motion for having Lorraine Hall represent the Behavioral Health Planning and Advisory Council on the State Rehabilitation Council, and I will do my part to connect Lorraine to Augusta at SRC. Anyone willing to second that?
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Wave.
Aye.
This is Ty. Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Fabulous. Lorraine will become our SRC rep. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
SRC.
Just filling in some details here, sorry. All right, so yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the quick turnaround, even getting a new member appointed. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff going on with behavioral health, as was mentioned by Aaliyah and our presenters this morning, is that, yeah, behavioral health is really in the limelight. Not just recovery services, but kind of across the board behavioral health. And one of those big things is really behavioral health reform. We've talked a lot or hinted a lot about the task force, the behavioral health task force. There are next steps processing or going through the sausage maker to for this behavioral health reform, including a contractor for developing and delivering a plan to establish a behavioral health administration. We've talked quite a bit about that. That's that phase one of the behavioral health task force recommendations, is creating this new, really the authority for behavioral health in the state. So it's not a confusion of, oh, you go here for one thing that's related to behavioral health, and there's a different department over here that does some behavioral health stuff. It's really combining all those things, have one specific authority that is responsible for the behavioral health system in Colorado. So there is a contractor that has been procured to come up with ways to establish this behavioral health administration, as well as include how Medicaid and private insurance is going to fit into and align with this new behavioral health system in Colorado. So I think we talk a lot about funding, right? Whether funding is lacking or there's funding is just dispersed all over the place. Really, this contractor is there to come up with ideas about how to incorporate all of those different behavioral health funding lines into a singular thing that's easier for providers and individuals to deliver and access services across the whole continuum. So we're excited about that. It's running that contract for that contractor that is establishing all this stuff is running through CDHS executive staff, which is even better because they're direct lines to the, governor appointed director of the Department of Human Services, who's on the health cabinet, who has a direct line to the governor's office, which makes it a little bit easier to make things move along. Right. So the other piece that this contractor is going to be doing is conducting a statutory review. So those Colorado laws that govern behavioral health in Colorado, really taking a deep dive into Colorado statutes and saying, well, what makes sense? Where should these programs actually be housed? Should it be the Behavioral Health Administration? Should there be a bunch of different things in different departments, which has led to some confusion? So with that, the plan is supposed to be ready June of this year. So, that's a short turnaround, right? 6 months from now. I'm guessing the end of June. So the end of June, start of fiscal year 22. So with that, there's going to be a lot of work done, and also on there's a legislative session that's going to happen, hopefully, but we'll get to that in a second. So any questions about that first step in behavioral health reform and that contractor that has been procured?
I'm not sure how to phrase this. On the statutory part where they're going to be doing research, are they going to be looking at all of the state laws so that, for example, I've been thinking a lot about emergency management and the COVID thing and the things that they do, and that there's a mental health and a behavioral health element to that because of the causes. So would they be looking at the Department of Health, that's like what Dr. Fauci does for the federal government? It's not the Department of Behavioral Health or the Office of Behavioral Health. So are they going to be looking at that sort of thing and just searching everything for a mental health element?
Correct. Yes, that is my understanding. So the department you're looking for is Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Yes. So yes, looking at the behavioral health programs there, even looking in, so the health department also does health facility licensing. So looking at how licensing affects behavioral health facilities and kind of where that should be, or it's in the right spot. And a lot of these, they could be in the right spot. It's also looking at the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, HCPF, or Medicaid, the department that runs Medicaid for Colorado, and looking at how Medicaid behavioral health programs fit into the larger behavioral health system as well as all the other departments. We just talked about labor and employment, right? So do their IPS programs, are they in the right spot there, right? So everything's open, right? So all of the titles of Colorado statutes. So that's why I brought up that it's a pretty quick turnaround. So a pretty comprehensive review of all of Colorado laws, that a plan will be submitted by June. That's a quick turnaround, but that's what the contractor's for. So,
Ryan, this is Margie. I wondered, are they also, or is someone looking at the funding sources that are coming into the state as well? Thinking in terms of grants, I know the new COAC System of Care grant is just starting, so that there are obligations and deliverables that are included in different grant that we are currently existing under. Are those going to also be looked at? Because in some cases that would not be a flexible option of what you're doing with those grant funds.
yep. So it's twofold with external grants. So I think they're going to be looking at current grants like our block grants and system of care and all of those, as well as other funding opportunities to support behavioral health in Colorado. So coming up within that plan of, there's this federal grant that's maybe an offshoot from a federal department that historically OBH doesn't work with, but it hits on behavioral health. Like, the plan should include some of those things as well, to provide as much funding for the state's behavioral health system as possible. Yeah, I mean, once again, that's another very heavy lift as well, searching for all of the funding that we have or that we potentially could have access to, I mean, really support the people of Colorado in whatever they need behavioral health related. So another piece that has been exciting and interesting, maybe you've heard of the 988 implementation. So the Federal Communications Commission has adopted rules establishing a 988 number. So very similar to 911, but this is a new nationwide 3-digit phone number for Americans in crisis to connect with suicide prevention and mental health crisis counselors. It's required to be up and running by 2022, July 16th of 2022. So with that, we have been hearing some rumblings about some bill possibly this year, setting up that process to come up with how is Colorado going to implement this 988 number. If you are very interested in that, Chris Miller from the Office of Behavioral Health will be leading some implementation planning for 988, which includes review of policy and data related to crisis calls and how this works with 911. If you're interested in how telephone systems and dispatch works, this might be a good time for you to be part of the participant in that stakeholder group. And this would also be my time to plug the newsletter, the Office of Behavioral Health newsletter that comes out once a month. I'll put the link in the website. All of the contact information about stakeholder groups, implementation planning groups are usually included in that monthly newsletter. It is only once a month, so you're not going to be inundated with a bunch of, here, OBH is doing this at this time. And it comes, I think, on the fourth Friday of the fourth Thursday of every month. So it's just once a month, but it has a lot of good information in there. Questions about 988?
This is Ty. I have a question.
Sure.
Is it going to be crisis only, or will there be an option for people who need like warm lines? It'd be nice if Colorado had a real nice warm line.
Yeah, I think it's so new in the development that I think comments like that are exactly what needs to happen within this policy and data review, right? So I think the plan right now is that there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, is that number is going to be replaced with the 988 number. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, well, I think states also have that opportunity to provide some state-specific call functioning, because each state is going to have to answer their own line. So there's a lot of moving parts with that, with the Public Utilities Commission and fees for landline phone providers, as well as cell phone providers, and paying fees to make sure that the 988 number is funded for states. So there's a lot of stuff in the background for this, but Ty, you're right on, is that this is really our opportunity to try to get this right on the front end.
I am interested, and my concern would be, if I'm in crisis and I call a number and then someone comes to my door, is it going to make things worse? Is it going to escalate the situation? Whereas a warm line, a true warm line, you know, offers that support and tries to talk people into getting the support that they need without forcing that support on them.
Yep, Ty, I think you're hitting on a lot of good things, and I think that's exactly what the crisis line is trying to do as well, to make it easier to access and less stigmatizing, so it's not an immediate response or potentially even a law enforcement response if you call something looking for any type of support. So yeah, like I said, I will send out the information about how to be involved in that implementation stakeholder group that will be starting shortly. So I mentioned the 2021 Colorado legislative session. So just a quick update on that. The General Assembly will commence its regular session on January 13th for essentially one day, and then they're going to pause until February 16th. Hopefully they start back up on the 16th. This is one of those COVID dependent things. So this time is usually a time where we would have bill drafts from interim committees and whatnot, but yeah, interim committees didn't meet this year. So we don't have any hard and fast drafts available about bill proposals, but we do know that some behavioral health specific bills are happening. We talked a lot today about the peer bill, and there's a stakeholder meeting earlier this week. So Mental Health Colorado with the Colorado Mental Health Wellness Network is running a bill related to peer support specialists. This is very similar to last year's House Bill 2011-39. It sets up what they're calling recovery, or RSSOs, recovery support specialists or service organizations, with the ability to bill Medicaid for services provided by peers. I haven't seen the bill language for some additional stuff, but they're talking about adding some language requiring the managed service organizations. So those are those organizations that oversee the substance use disorder services in regions across the state, to also require that recovery services are included in their range of services, not just treatment services. I haven't seen any of that language yet. That was a pretty hot topic during the stakeholder meeting earlier this week. And then the last piece, they were also talking about standardizing peer credentialing. That's why I brought that up to earlier today about what does peer credentialing look like across the state, and if there are current standards that everyone has to meet, because they're looking at potentially doing that. As soon as I get a draft, I will forward that to folks of BPAC once that draft is available for dissemination, because I think that is a very interesting bill that we hit on this quite a bit each month. So that's the peer bill. There's also coming back with the secure transportation bill. That was House Bill 2012-84. Mental Health Colorado is planning on running a secure transportation bill. So that's one of those programs that I think we've talked about this previously, that if there is a behavioral health response that's needed and someone needs to go somewhere, the back of a police car in handcuffs probably isn't the most appropriate response, as well as a fully equipped medical hospital on wheels, which is an ambulance, probably isn't needed either. So trying to come up with a way to have a less stigmatizing response that isn't in with flashing lights, to allow someone to get to where they need to go. So that is the plan with the secure transportation bill. Once again, this is not a CDHS bill. This is not an OBH bill. This is Mental Health Colorado. We have been involved in the stakeholder process for the bill last year. I've also not seen the draft this year, but it sounds like it would be similar to 1284 from last year. Like I said, the 988, we're also hearing that there's potentially a bill this year to come up with the Colorado's plan for implementing the 988 number. Also, I just got word that the Colorado Association of Addiction Professionals, CAP, is thinking about running a cleanup bill to House Bill 1206 that changed the addiction, or the CAC 1, 2s, and 3s to the technician and specialist. I haven't seen any details of that, about what that cleanup would look like. We are currently planning, or we are going to State Board tomorrow to update our Office of Behavioral Health rules for the addiction counseling program. So that is setting those training standards for what an individual must meet to pursue a credential as an addiction counselor. But this bill would, yeah, I mean, our rules need to go into place before this bill would pass. So there's potential that we'll have a lot of rule updates with the CAP program moving forward. Once again, I think that's an interesting one for a lot of folks in here about addiction counseling, and I'll make sure that this group has that bill once a draft is available. Also, kind of a quick note, the opioid interim committee bills. So like the bill last year that Julie and I went to committee to talk about Senate Bill 20028 about IPS and other recovery support services funding. So a lot of those funding pieces got cut out of that bill. There is talk about how do we get those pieces funded again. Also, I haven't seen bills with that, but I know people are interested in pursuing those things that went through the whole process, but were at the last second cut out. So I think that is exciting as well. And people are really, or legislators are really showing interest in what behavioral health and specifically recovery needs additional funding. Just keep your eye out for that bill as well. And then the last two bills I'll hit on is the Behavioral Health Administration. That is a Department of Human Services bill, creating that Behavioral Health Administration, as well as updates to the Transition Specialist program, allowing more people to access that transition specialist program for folks moving to lower levels of care. Those are both CDHS bills. I also do not have drafts for those. They are with legislators being drafted as we speak, and there should be stakeholder meetings scheduled shortly. So like I said, I'll try to do my best to keep everyone informed in the meantime, as well as hit on bills every month during our meetings, especially once the session starts here. These things go fast. So yeah, I'll do what I can to make sure that everyone is as informed as possible. So questions about this session, potential bills, you're hearing other things about bill ideas, proposals, drafts?
This is Margie. I just, for where I live, they had a town hall meeting with our state senator and representative, and I'd probably to be obnoxious, I just asked what their thoughts were about the Behavioral Health Task Force recommendations. And to be honest, I don't think they really knew very much about what I was talking about. They said they had heard from providers that had concerns, but it made me realize that I think when those opportunities arise in our local communities, that it doesn't hurt for us to at least ask the question of our legislators, kind of thinking with Laura when she's sending out her letters. But I think it's really important for them to be aware of what work is being done through the task force. And from the mental health perspective, why it is so important to have that done well. So it's just, it was one of those moments that you realized basically all they talked about was people's concerns about wearing masks when they went to the Capitol. I was amazed that that was their primary, that was the primary questions that they were getting from folks. But I just think putting that on their radar screen is really very important.
Yep, yeah, I will echo that, Margie. And the Department of Human Services does have a whole legislative team that is there to essentially lobby legislators and inform them about behavioral health services. Just like local legislators, they're no different than you and I, right? They have their interests, they have their platform that they ran on, which a lot of those interests of folks don't include behavioral health, or a lot of people don't have even an understanding of behavioral health, right? So I think there's a piece where we need to be patient with legislators as well. I think we get that every session where we kind of have these cringe-worthy things happening from legislators on the mic related to behavioral health, and even how they talk about individuals and people. So yes, I mean, stigma is still out there. Information about what behavioral health is still a need. And yes, and I think that is also a challenge for all of us that are more well versed in behavioral health, to make sure that people in elected positions are aware of what people's concerns are, right? So town halls are a great example of that.
Well, and I know that we talked about this at maybe one of our previous meetings back when, I guess when Mo Keller was heading our legislative committee, that we actually did send letters to legislators from us, from BPAC. I don't know if this might be an area at some point we want to think about doing that. Just any way we can elevate it to their, to put it on their radar screen, I think is important.
And if I may, real quickly, Margie, one person talking about something is like we're hearing it from 50 people. If they and they'll be like, oh, this is a big issue. It's a big issue. Well, why? And then it'll get down to, because this lady came to a meeting and she brought it up, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I didn't want to hear all the mask things because I've already heard them. So, you know, I've made a kind of resolution for the year to contact my representatives and just let them know who I am, and then let them know what I'm interested in, and just make so that I'm more comfortable. But one person, you can't imagine how one person who's educated, intelligent, knows what they're talking about, talking to a legislator. It's so rare they'll pay attention.
Yep, I mean, I think that's a good public service announcement, is that, yeah, representatives do represent you, right? I mean, they're broken into those districts that are supposed to be small enough that they are well versed in what their little districts need. So yeah, I mean, I challenge everyone to do their part with their local government, whether it's more on the statewide level or even just city and county politics.
So it just seems to me that this next month is the best opportunity to provide stakeholder input to the legislators, since they won't be at the Capitol. I'm assuming they'll be doing work of some sort, whether it's committee meetings or whatever, but it just seems like this might be the opportunity to have a more captive audience, so to speak. That's kind of where I'm going with all of this.
Yeah, Natalie, I think you bring up a really good point. So like stakeholder meetings right now is really about talking about the very fundamentals of drafting a bill, right? So once we do get into the session and then a bill gets introduced and then goes to committee, it really does go pretty fast through those. So yes, they'll still have to have bills go through a bunch of different committees, and there are opportunities there, but it's not as clean an opportunity to actually get your input into bills as it is on the front end, where they're still thinking about what the topic and what each section of the bill. I mean, that really is this time, which, yeah, when I start hearing about stakeholder meetings like that, I'll also send those out because it's a little easier on the front end, because it's a little less formal than when they're actually in committee. And you actually have to sign up for testimony and go onto the mic, which is intimidating for a lot of folks, where right now it's more of a, like, yes, everyone talk, but be reasonable with each other and not have to go through the whole Robert's Rule of Order stuff that committee hearings have. So.
Yeah, okay.
So the last thing I wanted to touch on is OBH rule updates. So last month we talked about controlled substance licensing and opioid programs. We went to state board for first reading last month. We go to state board for second reading adoption tomorrow. So this is updating controlled substance licensing. So the Office of Behavioral Health licenses programs, those methadone programs. So there's a bill 2 years ago that made some changes to it, so we're updating our rules to align with that. There's really not major changes to controlled substance licensing and methadone programs or those opioid treatment programs. It's just more of a technical cleanup type of bill with that. So state board is tomorrow. Like I said earlier, the addiction counseling rules from that House Bill 1206 from last year that updated addiction counseling or CAC 1s, 2s, and 3s to those technicians and specialists. Our rules also need to get update for that. So they go to state board tomorrow for first reading. Our rules, we're cutting back a lot of what our rules currently have related to addiction counseling. We have a lot of language in our current rules that we have no authority to enforce, such as the hours requirements that you need in order to be a CAC 1, right? That's a statutory requirement that is enforced through DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and their Addiction Counselor Examiners Board. So we're removing a lot of our rules because we have no ability to enforce them. So our rule volume, or this rule section for addiction counseling, is going to be pretty bare bones. It's going to say these are the trainings you have to go through per statute in order to apply as a technician or in order to apply as a specialist. I'm really getting down to the heart of what OBH has the authority to do for addiction counseling. If you're interested, the rulemaking session starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow at the State Board of Human Services. It's an open meeting, just like all of the boards at CDHS. You have the opportunity to testify, whether it's for or against. They usually cut your testimony to between 3 and 5 minutes, just to make sure rules go through, or you can just listen. Yeah, so it's pretty basic, this rule update, but we are expecting there to be some testimony because the addiction counseling program is kind of confusing because there are 2 separate departments that have a role in the addiction counseling credential, primarily through the Department of Regulatory Agencies. So, the other ones we are currently working on that we've talked about a little bit is the 12-year-old psychotherapy consent. There's a bill 2 years ago, House Bill 191120, that added a protection for certain professionals to provide psychotherapy consent on an outpatient basis for youth, essentially ages 12 to 15. 15-year-olds are covered under 2765 to receive behavioral health services as well as SED services. They can consent without their parental or guardian overseeing any of their services at 15. And this bill allowed outpatient psychotherapy to be provided if those individuals met a certain criteria established by certain mental health professionals. So this is a mental health professional protection. It is not every 12-year-old has the ability to consent to receive behavioral health services. It is not that. This is a scope of practice protection. So our rules are trying to clarify that. It's not a hard and fast across the board. Every facility, every individual that works with youth don't have to get consent if the kid's at 12. It is not that. So we're trying to clarify that in our rule update. I'll also provide that rule update to you once we have an actual functioning draft. Questions about 12-year-old consent. There's a lot of misinformation about the 12-year-old consent that I hear all over the place. So that's part of the reason we're trying to get this out there. This is actually in DORA statute. So we have also reached out to DORA to provide some guidance to their mental health professionals that this specifically affects, because it is certain professionals, not even certain facilities. And then the last one, we are currently working hard to update the DUI education and treatment rules. So that's driving under the influence or driving while ability impaired. It's really a cleanup on the OB approval process. The Office of Behavioral Health approves all of the programs that provide level 1 and level 2 DUI education and treatment. So we're trying to clean that up to make it abundantly clear about what programs need to do to provide that that education and treatment to individuals that are court ordered to receive DUI education and treatment services. So that's what I had. Looks like we got 5-6 minutes left. I'm willing to take questions, clarifications. If you have other things that I missed that you want to hear about that I may not be able to answer, but I will take back. Everyone's avoiding eye contact.
Anybody have anything before we sign off? Don't want to miss anybody. All right, please all take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for your input today. Thank you, Aaliyah, for all the wonderful information you provided for us. Look forward to having our conversation continue next month. And everyone take care of yourself, and we will see you soon.